Hi, everyone. We are talking to Dr. William Hansard. Did I say your name right?
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay. And he is in North Dakota. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. Dickinson, North Dakota.
Awesome. And you're a recent grad of UTA, which is really exciting. And I wanted to talk to you about having a digital presence. And I don't know how I came across your digital presence. I don't remember that we're connected on Facebook, and I've enjoyed following you. And I remember it must have been a few years ago, you posted a link or let everyone know you were on TikTok and sharing content and that you were generating all these clicks. And so just had a couple of questions for you. So tell us about your academic background, interests, and what you're doing now in North Dakota.
Sure. So thank you for having me, first of all. I appreciate you asking me to speak with you today. As you said, I recently finished my PhD in history from UTA, very, very exciting times. And I also have certificates in archival administration and public history, both from the program at UTA, which I have found really useful in connecting with the public. My bachelor's degree was also in history and also from UTA. I was there almost 10 years in total getting my degrees. So I got a great education from UTA. Interests, my academic interests are, and really my personal interests for that matter, are very much sort of popular culture, popular entertainment. My PhD dissertation was on labor in the traveling circus, in sort of the golden age, the Gilded Age and Progressive Era, 1880s, 1890s, 1900s, etc. And so I've always kind of been a historian of that time period, which is in part what brought me to the job I'm in now, which is the social media and education coordinator at the Theodore Roosevelt Center in Dickinson, North Dakota. And so what I do here is kind of two sides of things. I do some of the actual archival, if you want to call it that. We're a digital library here, so I catalog items that go up on our website. But mostly I do the social media side of things. So I put up our content on Facebook and Twitter. I write a blog each week for our website. And some of this I do directly related to Theodore Roosevelt, and sometimes it's just about that time period. So last week, for example, our blog was on the history of why did the chicken cross the road? So I like these sort of novel, unusual topics. That's really what I am drawn to.
Oh, I love it. That's great. Okay, I'm going to check out the blog and the website for that, and I'll put it in the link under this YouTube video. So what led you to establish a digital presence as an academic?
So before you can even say as an academic, you have to establish that I have been, had additional digital presence personally since I don't know when, since I was a kid. I joined Facebook in like 2010 in high school. So I have always been involved with the sort of digital world. Heck, I think I was born the same year the World Wide Web launched, 1991. So I like to say, the internet and I have kind of grown up together. So I've always felt a part of it. Establishing one as an academic almost happened by accident. I was using TikTok sort of as just a viewer. I was watching videos, and somebody made a video once where they remarked that they were amazed that Rosa Parks lived long enough that she could have watched Shrek 2. And it was this unusual historical timeline thing. And so I started looking at some of these other sort of things that mess with your sense of time. And I found that that's sort of a popular genre of these kinds of videos. And so once I had that sort of in this popular sense, I started extending it to some of my more academic topics, but also keeping it light, keeping it fun, keeping some of my personal interests, that kind of thing. But really it started as me just enjoying social media myself, and sort of a natural transition of taking those things that I enjoyed personally and sort of making it a little more academic than the average creator.
I know what you mean. Yeah, I've been kind of immersed on YouTube since it was invented, and that's kind of been my platform. So yeah, I know what you mean. You're a viewer and then you just do it.
Exactly.
Awesome. That's awesome. Okay, good. And then You had an old channel, so tell us about your new channel, kind of what kind of content you do. You have a hashtag learn on TikTok. That's awesome. Is that a popular hashtag?
Oh yeah, that's one of their like big ones that the company themselves actually promotes, and the actual really big creators, people like Hank Green, for example, a science educator, will use that and be promoted through that. So that's part of the reason I use it, is because it is sort of one of the standards. And usually when I use the hashtags, I'll use some of those big ones, and then I'll use ones related to whatever it is that I'm talking about. So one of my videos that I put out a couple of weeks ago was on the history of sliced bread. And so there's, hashtags about bread in there as well. In terms of the old channel, I had at my peak nearly 250,000 followers on that channel, and it just got too big. It just got overwhelming. I had never set out to really be a creator, a digital creator, and then once I got that far along, it felt sort of that I was obligated to keep doing and to keep giving and to do as much as I could do. And it just was too overwhelming. And I just wanted to step back, and I had a lot of really big fans that were still bombarding me. So I just deleted the whole thing and stepped away. And I don't regret doing that. That made the most sense to me, but I did start the channel again. I'm still doing some of the same things. Again, I like novel, sort of unusual topics, think the kinds of things you would see in Ripley's Believe It or Not. And I managed to leverage some of this success to get a tour of the Ripley's Believe It or Not warehouse earlier this year. Yeah. So some of my videos, if you scroll back, you will see are from inside the Ripley's warehouse, which is not something everyone gets to see.
Behind the scenes. I love it.
Yes.
Oh, that's great. I love how I just did a skim of your new channel, and I noticed that people are like, oh, you're back, and we found you. Like, how do people find you? Is it your hashtag? Do you think, is it your username?
So it's some of both of those. The username is definitely unique. Professor Pork Pie, right, referring to the pork pie hat. There's not too many people who still wear the pork pie hat on a daily basis anymore like I do. But that was part of my brand even before I was a social media creator. Yeah. Someone once told me that with my hat, I'm Dr. Jekyll, and without it, I'm Mr. Hyde. So it's just sort of part of who I am. Yeah. So yes, people search for that, and they search for these things. The historical timeline is a phrase that is often used. That's kind of a weird, fuzzy kind of phrase. But that's a content that I do. Again, things like when Harriet Tubman was born, Thomas Jefferson was still alive. When she died, Ronald Reagan had been born. Wow, so these things that mess with your sense of the historical flow of time is something that I am known for. Okay. Did you make up that hashtag, or was it out there? I don't know if there's one specifically for the timeline or not. I've used a couple of different ones, but as far as I know, no one was using that sort of specific phrase, or if they were, it was not something I had come across. Yeah. But I use a lot of, hashtag history talk. And again, the hashtag learn on TikTok. If I'm doing anything with any of my books, book talk is a huge tag and a whole sort of subculture itself too. So yeah. Oh, good. Yeah, like book trailers. Well, good. Do you read all the comments and interact with people? I try to interact as much as I can, and I do try to read as many of the comments as I can. On the old channel, it got to the point that I usually couldn't do that. There were simply too many. But I feel like if I'm going to have this presence, interacting is an important part of it, right? Otherwise, it's just sort of making stuff into the void. To me, it doesn't have nearly as much meaning if you're not finding some way to interact with some of these people. But again, like I said, it can get out of hand. So finding that balance is really important. And also finding the balance between which of the more positive interactions you're going to have and more of the negative ones, because the negative ones are going to come. You're going to have critics, you're going to have naysayers, but sometimes there are valuable lessons there. And one of the ones that is most important to me was a video response I made where someone had complained, well, all this stuff you're saying is just stuff you could find in 5 minutes on Google, which is true. I wasn't, putting brand new information out there. But I said, you wouldn't go into a teacher's classroom and tell them they need new material, right? You know, a history teacher is giving you information that's easily findable, but it's the way they're delivering it. It's the fact that some of the people are not going to have heard that information before, et cetera, et cetera. So it's important to find ways to learn lessons from the critics as well, which I have enjoyed doing.
Yeah, interesting. Good. Yeah, I read my comments too. And then kind of more like the academic connection, how can people use platforms like TikTok for teaching or even research dissemination?
So let me start with the second of those, with the research and research dissemination. I have made so many great connections on TikTok, on Facebook, on all kinds of platforms, and you really can get involved in those networks much better than you ever could before, thanks to these social media platforms. So I have been able, to connect with people or to stay connected with people that it might have been more difficult otherwise. So I think making those individual connections is really important.
Networking, yeah, totally.
And then, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Yeah, I love it. No, keep going.
So the other part of it is I have found I've been able to get people interested in the big picture topics by starting with something smaller, something more obscure. And that's something that I do in the classroom or, on social media, either one. So again, like if you check the blog for the Theodore Roosevelt Center, I always either start really big and go to something highly specific or start with something specific and go bigger. So one of the first blogs I wrote, in fact, it may have been the first blog I wrote, was on Theodore Roosevelt in the Uncle Scrooge comic books, in the Scrooge McDuck comics.
Oh, yeah.
And so that started with just his little cameos in these comic books, but it got bigger into sort of a discussion of how history is written and how historical fiction is written and sort of what the lines are and are not, and sort of historical methodologies, for lack of a better term, that I could use Scrooge McDuck as my starting point. So again, that sort of novelty, I think, is an important way of getting people interested.
Yeah, I need to do more of that. Create that interest as a hook. So, well, good. And then do you have, I would say, well, I'm seeing more academics on TikTok, and I have a colleague that will send me like COVID/pandemic health TikTok videos. So I know that during the pandemic, a lot more academics came out, especially like epidemiologists. But have you been seeing academics on TikTok?
Oh yes, and that's definitely something that grew with COVID. I mean, definitely, doctors and other, medical professionals, but all kinds of academics were looking for outlets for their information. And many, of course, have stayed, and many have grown their careers and grown their followings. Like I said, some of the people that I have made connections with and people that I know now, either have books that have come out or are coming out or have been featured in articles. And so, yeah, it's a growing community, and for the most part, for the better. The pros outweigh the cons, I think.
Okay. Yeah, you just have to be brave.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. I would encourage people to at least check out your channel, and then also, look for academic people to connect with. And I totally agree with what you said about making connections on social media, professional connections. I've even found collaborators. So.
Yes.
Definitely. Well, good. Excellent. I think that's it. Do you have any final tips for people for kind of considering putting their content out on the internet?
There's a couple of things. The first I would say is don't expect to become, viral overnight. It takes a lot of work, and you can never predict what things are going to become popular or not. I have found that even in the job I'm working now, doing this social media job, is things that I would expect everyone's going to find, hilarious and great and share, don't get any attention, and then things that I just put up on a whim all of a sudden blow up. Yeah. So you can't always predict it. You can't always sort of engineer the success you might be looking for. So you kind of have to be prepared to go with the flow. That would be my number one sort of thing is don't get too caught up in the hype of it, or if not enough people see what you're making. You kind of have to be in it for the long haul.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, just kind of experiment. I'm going to put your links in the information below so people can check you
Great.
out. And then
Thank you. Appreciate it.
yeah, Professor Pork Pie PhD, is that right?
Yes.
On TikTok. Awesome. Okay, thank you so much.